Hi, looking into the Australia-India series, which starts on Boxing Day, day after Christmas this year. Um, Again, would be ideal to leave us for a little while after the New Zealand series, but it's going to be too compactly scheduled to do so. Um, Really tough series to predict, um, for a few reasons. The one main reason is we don't know who's going to play. We know Mitchell Johnson won't be playing, but injuries are an issue for both sides. Virender Sehwag's had injuries for the last year or so. Um, at the moment, Australia's got one decent sized, decent capped player in its bowling attack in Settle, two debutants today. We also have some issues in the batting card. Watson, for instance, is an issue. Sean Marsh, how relevant is he? I don't know, but he's out potentially as well. Tendulkar's been on and off as well with injuries. Missed the West Indies series, not this recent one, but the one previously. So lots of injury question marks. That's one part. The other one is that, and related, is that both teams are in transition. Australia are pretty upfront, I believe, about the fact they're in transition. The Ponting stuff aside, obviously going with a lot of young players, and that's fine. It's healthy. It's positive. And India sort of don't want to admit that they are in that position, but they are. They're not as good as they thought they were. The bowling attack in particular is an issue. Yeah, I'll come back to that in a second. Um, but they're aging. Just an aging side. Tendulkar, Dravid, even Sehwag's had a lot of tests under that 32 age. Zahir Khan ditto. And now Harbhajan is gone. Well, it was a really positive move to get rid of Harbhajan. One guy that will be happy not to see him is Ricky Ponting. Ricky Ponting was dismissed 10 times against Harbhajan Singh, which is the most of any player that he faced, a 22.33 average. Um, yeah, let's start with the Australians. Well, actually, we'll start with the Indians. My concern with India is, well, there's two concerns. There's been a long-standing concern, which is the issue with their bowling attack and where do the 20 wickets come from. And we saw the West Indies hit over 400 in a test, in an innings, and over 500, and that's a team that had really, really struggled to get 300 prior to that in the previous 10 tests. But bowled okay, but not batted well. And India just couldn't make any penetration, particularly at the top. I know they got a map for 134, but they also considered 590 or something in that test. That's an ongoing issue. It's always been there for India, basically forever. In varying degrees. At the moment, it's there probably more than normal because there's just no one there to bowl. They're bringing in Ashwin, who got a century in that last test, and maybe Oja or someone else. I suspect that we'll be looking at a guy named Kumar. Praveen Kumar is an option, but I think he's injured at the moment. A few other young guys that are playing in the one-day internationals, but they're all completely unproven commodities. And going by the track record for India's pace bowlers, they're probably not going to be very good, frankly. Um, One pace bowler that we always hear quite a bit about with India is Ishant Sharma. I've talked about him in a video previously. I mentioned Ricky Ponting had gotten out a lot to Harbhajan Singh. A lot is made of Sharma's coming out here and getting Ricky Ponting, and there's true and false to that. The true side is that Sharma has gotten Ricky Ponting out 6 times in 8 matches for an average of 15 and a half. So that's obviously good. However, that series that everyone talks about, his sort of breakthrough series in 2008, Sharma only had 6 wickets in the series. He had 2 wickets a match at nearly 60, 59.66. Everyone was saying how great it was, whatever. It literally wasn't. It was a terrible series, mitigated by the fact he was young, sure, but like just not no production. And Sharma's more or less carried that non-production through most of his career. He's going to be probably their most experienced bowler. Yes, Zahir Khan is out here currently. Yes, they're hopeful that he'll play. I'll believe it when I see it. He didn't play in the West Indies series previously, either the home and home series. He played one session in the 4 Test series against England, so really he hasn't played for a long time. He's 32. Had one good year, which was 2010. Anyway, so like, there's not a lot to base on why he's going to be this massive breakthrough contributor, even if he does play all 4 Tests, which would be an amazing accomplishment. I think there's almost no chance of that. So Ishant Sharma's probably the main guy. That's a concern for India, obviously. That's one concern. The other concern is a bit more nuanced, a bit more interesting. And it's to do with India's batting. And two things about this. One is India's batting has not been as spectacular as I thought it was. They didn't get 300, or didn't get past 300 in England in 8 attempts, famously. And it was good against the West Indies without being great. It was okay, it was fine. But it's the West Indies. It scored 600. I know they had their moments, but yeah, what can you say about that? But it's not so much the existing guys I'm concerned about: Sehwag, Gambier, Tendulkar, Dravid, although I am concerned about injury side of things. I am more concerned about their young batsmen, and this is the big issue. I had assumed that India could basically pick out whoever they want from Ranji Trophy and put him into their test team and they'd average 45. Because the Ranji Trophy is famous for having incredibly strong batting in it, in that domestic competition. And India will bring out their army of young drivers out here. Rohit Sharma, Suresh Raina, and Virat Kohli. And I suspect particularly Raina and Kohli will get shots, and I suspect Rohit Sharma probably will get a chance at some point. You're looking at Gambhir, Sehwag, Dravid, Tendulkar. The other two will go to presumably one of those three, or two of those three players. Looking at, I saw Raina particularly in England and was not impressed at all. But to give you the numbers, Raina and Kohli, Sharma has yet to play a test, but Raina and Kohli have played 19 matches so far. 10 of those, by the way, are against the West Indies or New Zealand, the two worst teams in the world, major test cricket. They have a 33 century rate, only got 2 centuries, 1 century in the 33 innings they've played. 24.2% score percentage, and are averaging 29.06. Considering these are the big young things, the next big things for India, I'm really concerned about that. I don't know, how long is this Dravid thing going to go on? Tendulkar's shown a little bit of sign of wear. Hasn't had a century for quite some time. I'm not saying they're done, but they're close to done. And you can't rely on them to be the batting card as they once were. Like previously, you could say Dravid, Tendulkar, fine, we'll be right. But now, you really can't. You do need some guys around him. Sehwag may or may not be fit. He has had a good record in Australia, but what happens if he's not fit? Gambhir, I have my questions about. And the young guys, they're not coming through. 19 tests is not insignificant. It's a significant amount of test matches, and to have 1 century in that from the next two big things in Indian cricket should be concerning for India, frankly. And so I don't even think you can bank on them getting a lot of runs. Obviously, the question then is Australia's bowling attack, and we'll get to that in a second. India also have never won a series in Australia, which brings its own concerns along. Australia. Michael Clarke's playing great. I'm not just saying that because he got a century today, which actually was a pretty spotty century. It was not consistently great. But it's his 3rd century, and I think he's lost 6 innings or something like that. And they've all been really bombastic centuries. They've all been very boundary-centric centuries, which is very unlike Michael Clarke. I think he's made a conscious effort to be more boundary-focused. Just looking at that 151 against South Africa and Cape Town, it was an exceptional innings. 151 out of 284. So the only relevant score on the card. He made 151 out of the 244 runs after he came to the crease. Had 88 runs in boundaries, and scored that 151 off 176 balls. Michael Clarke doesn't do that. Michael Clarke doesn't hit boundaries like that. And if he can, and if that's what he wants to do, and I think today, again, 139 notwithstanding, we saw some of the difficulty in transitioning from the sort of the manipulating strike, singles-based, playing slow bowling kind of game that Clarke was so proficient at, to a boundary-orientated game. There are going to be little hiccups, but if Clarke can pull this off, he's going to become a real factor in this series, and I just expect he will. India are going to throw slow bowlers at him, and Clarke he's good at playing slow bowling, obviously. So that's a real concern for India. Peter Siddle's probably the only guy at the moment you can say, yes, he is going to play in some of these tests as a fast bowling option. Johnson, as we said, is out. Harris is currently out. Bollinger has pretty much been sent to the side. Hilfenhaus much the same. They're going with the youth movement. Understandable. Just a note on Ben Cummings. Everyone here at the moment is just absolutely Ben Cummings crazy. It's sort of like Beatlemania for Ben Cummings. He had a pretty good first test. Like, he had a very good first test. He was 7 wickets. And bowled fine. Looked fine. No problem. But it's one test. Whether he's good or not is completely a matter of conjecture. He could be great. He could be terrible. It still remains to be seen. He had a good test match. Fine. He's got a really good short ball. That's the one thing I noticed that he showed in South Africa was a good short ball. Presuming that that's a genuine skill that he has, that's going to be very valuable here in particular. I mentioned Raina and Kohli, and those young 3 batsmen. They're all drivers. They're all very bad off the back foot, particularly the really short balls, and bounces in particular. They don't handle them very well. I expect to see a couple of catches looping up to gully, possibly a short leg situation. That should be an important position through this series. Cummings, if he can play, and I don't know the status of Cummings, but if he can play in all 4 of these test matches ideally, could be a factor. This could be a really good series for him because it matches up quite well for that short pitch stuff, which is, I think, what so far in the very limited experience we've seen of him, what he does really well. But yeah, Siddle. He's going to be the one guy that presumably he'll play. He's going to be the steadying force, and we saw that in the New Zealand test, where he was the one economy guy. While Stark and Pattinson were going for 4 and over plus, Siddle was there consistently with like 2 economy rate. It's a valuable role, particularly when Watson's out, because Watson's normally that guy for Australia. That's another issue. Is what's he going to play? If he plays, where's he going to play? These are other issues. This is what makes it difficult to pick. But yeah, settle. One game against India. It's always got an average of 44 in that game. Obviously not great, but he did take 4 wickets, which is promising. And to some degree, that's what Australia are going to look for. Just, can you get us wickets? We need wickets. And I think they'll sort of go, we think we can bat our way out of trouble if Clark's playing really well. And Hussey, and hopefully Watson's back in the team, and Haddon's batting well today, for instance. And there's batting there, and India doesn't have a lot of bowling, so they think they can bat their way out of trouble. They might be right. So yeah, there's that. Nathan Lyon will play. It's going to be fun to watch a guy that averages 40 at first class level take on India's batting card, who are so good at playing slow bowling. And these drivers are going to eat him for breakfast, I suspect. Lyon took 4 wickets in this match, in the first innings here, and took 4 wickets in the Sri Lankan game as well, but they were all tail-enders. He's actually dismissed just 6 specialist batsmen in now 6.5 matches. I know I've said it before, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but yeah, I don't think good things are going to happen here. We will see, I guess. I could be wrong, but again, so far he's been surprisingly okay. He's averaging about 33, which is not great. In fact, it's below average, but it's been better than I thought it would, but I suspect here it's going to go bad places. As I mentioned, India have never won a series in Australia, so what am I going to pick considering all these unknown factors of young players, of injuries, the fact that I haven't picked Australia very well recently. I didn't pick either of their last 2 series results, so there you go. And not only did I not pick it, but I sort of don't think anyone did. There's sort of this feeling in Australia that, they're not a really good team. They're not an average team even. They might be a below average team. But England killed both of these teams. They killed both of them. And Australia then went to Sri Lanka, who was supposed to be okay, and they beat them 1-0 in 3 tests. Sri Lanka not looking great, okay, but they beat them 1-0 in 3 tests. They went to South Africa, who I think are really, really good, and drew that 1-1. Yeah, sure, they were lucky in the 47, and there were issues, and 2 wickets was a win. It wasn't exactly comprehensive, but they were tough and they fought. And that's 1-1 in South Africa, considering where this side is at the moment, is a really good result. They're playing pretty well. And they're coming to Australia to play a team that's never beaten them there, even when they've had much better teams, who are aging, who we don't really know what we're going to get. We've got no idea for the bowling. The bowling could be an absolute disaster. Australia could get 400 plus every single time out. There's no one on this Indian bowling attack that you know that you're going to get wickets from. No one. You're assuming that India are going to bat their way out of trouble. India was supposed to be this good. They're a paper tiger. Got beaten 4-0 against England. Nearly got beaten by West Indies in the last test they played. Surrendered the first innings lead to the West Indies in the first test there. This was in India. Weren't comprehensive in beating beating the West Indies in West Indies. Their form line isn't good enough, and it's a 12-month form line nearly. It's in South Africa where they played okay. England got killed in the first test, but okay. What have they done? What have they done that's really made us think that they're that great? They might be okay. These teams might be roughly similar. Maybe we don't know. We're speculating a lot in terms of talent, but home field advantage. The fact Australia has a really good record at home, playing. Look at the results. They're playing okay. They're winning more than they're losing. I think that Australia will probably win this series. It is close, but I'd pick 2-1 to Australia. That's what I'm going to go with. I was leaning towards 1-1 or 2-1. They're the 2 most likely results I think out of the 4 tests. I have too many questions about India. I have questions about both teams, but I have questions on can Dravid and Tendulkar keep producing when Tendulkar had not had a good year. Frankly, it's not been a terrible year, but it's not been a good year, and guys played 180 tests. Young players, bowling attack, travelling, too many questions. Australia, 2-1. I'll see you soon. Thanks, guys. Bye.